The room was quiet, except for the soft clatter of chess pieces and the shuffle of cards. A fire crackled in the corner, casting long shadows on the polished wooden floor. Stalin sat at the head of a long table, a faint smile on his lips. Around him were his generals and aides, men who commanded armies, yet tonight trembled like schoolboys. "Comrades," he said, his voice calm, "tonight we play. Let us see who truly understands strategy and who understands loyalty." The words were casual, almost jovial, but the meaning behind them was deadly. He moved the first chess piece with precision, eyes glinting like a hawk surveying prey. Every move was a question, every glance a test. The generals played cautiously, calculating, sweating under the quiet weight of Stalin's attention. No one dared speak unless spoken to. No one dared laugh at the wrong moment. And no one dared look away. Even the cards brought into play were not safe. A simple game of patience, skill, or chance became a lesson in survival. A wrong card, a hesitated move, a careless smile. Any could be read as weakness, disloyalty, or conspiracy. Stalin's laughter echoed softly through the room, low and deliberate. "Interesting," he murmured, moving his bishop. "Very interesting." The generals exchanged nervous glances. No one wanted to be the first to speak, and yet everyone wondered, which of us will survive the next move? By the end of the evening, some had won small victories, a captured piece, a cleverly played hand, but all had lost something far greater: peace of mind. Because in Stalin's games, winning or losing wasn't about points or pieces. It was about life and death. And the next move could be fatal. The fire flickered, shadows dancing across the walls as the generals leaned over the chessboard. One man, Colonel Ivan Petrov, made a bold move. It seemed clever, perhaps even brilliant, but in Stalin's eyes, it was reckless. Stalin murmured, tapping his finger against the table. "An interesting choice. Very interesting." Petrov forced a smile, trying to read the general secretary's expression. But Stalin's face was a mask, calm, almost serene. Yet beneath that calm, something dark and sharp moved, like a predator circling its prey. "You see, comrades," Stalin continued, "chess is not merely about pieces or positions. It is about foresight, patience, and loyalty." A bead of sweat ran down Petrov's temple. He realized, with a sudden chill, that every piece he moved was being weighed against something far larger than the game itself: his life, his career, his very loyalty to the leader. Stalin leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand. And a single misstep. He paused, letting the words hang. "Can cost everything." The officers at the table swallowed hard. No one dared speak. Petrov's hands shook slightly as he moved a knight. Carefully, too carefully. Every eye in the room was on him. Every breath felt like a judgment. By the time the chess game ended, Petrov had technically survived, but the message was clear. Winning wasn't enough. Every action, every choice was a test. And tonight, even the smallest error had been noted. Every officer understood the silent rule. In Stalin's games, miscalculation could be fatal, and no one would hear the warning until it was too late. Later that evening, after the chess games ended, Stalin summoned a smaller group to the card table. A select few generals and aides remained, their faces pale, hands slightly trembling. "Let us play something simpler," Stalin said with a faint smile, dealing the first hand. "Perhaps cards will reveal what chess cannot." The game was deceptively casual. Hearts, spades, diamonds, clubs, yet each card held weight far beyond the rules. A careless fold, a delayed move, a too loud laugh. Each was a potential mark against the player. One officer, Lieutenant Colonel Mikhailov, misread a play and lost a hand. He chuckled nervously, attempting to recover. Stalin's eyes didn't move from the table. "You see," he murmured softly, "losing can be informative." The generals glanced at one another, understanding immediately. Stalin wasn't angry. He was calculating. He wasn't seeking amusement. He was observing. Each gesture, each pause, each glance was carefully catalogued in his mind. The officer who thought he had escaped scrutiny found the NKVD taking notes minutes later. The faintest hint of fear, visible only in a twitch of an eye or a trembling hand, became part of Stalin's silent ledger. "The game," Stalin said, placing his last card with precision, "is never truly over. Even after the hand is played, the consequences remain." By the end of the night, the remaining men had learned a lesson stronger than any shouted command. In Stalin's Kremlin, even play was a battlefield. Even games were tests of survival, and losing was never just losing. A week later, Stalin hosted a lavish banquet. Crystal chandeliers glimmered over silver platters, the scent of roast and caviar filling the grand hall. The generals and aides took their seats, stiff with tension, hands resting lightly on knives and forks. Every smile was measured, every laugh rehearsed. "Comrades," Stalin said, raising a glass, "tonight we celebrate victories, both on the battlefield and in the mind." The room echoed with cautious cheers. But even as they spoke, Stalin was watching. Every pause, every glance, every hesitation was logged silently in his mind. He asked questions, innocent on the surface, deadly in subtext. "And how do you feel about loyalty, comrade? How much risk is too much risk? Would you act if you suspected disloyalty around you?" No one answered without thinking twice. No one dared speak before carefully weighing every word. When a toast was made, Stalin observed subtle reactions. A twitch of an eye, a stiffened posture, the slightest gulp. Even applause was scrutinized. Who raised their glass fastest? Who lingered too long? Who barely moved? By the end of the evening, no one was certain of their survival. They had dined, they had laughed, and yet every man knew. One misstep, one poorly chosen word, and the consequences could be fatal. Stalin, sitting at the head of the table, finally smiled. Not out of warmth or pleasure, but satisfaction. He had watched, he had tested, and he had measured loyalty, not with armies or reports, but with games, cards, and subtle conversation. The banquet ended, but the fear lingered, a silent, invisible chain wrapping tightly around each guest's mind. The next evening, Stalin summoned the remaining officers to his study. A storm raged outside, wind rattling the windows, snow whipping against the walls, a fitting backdrop for what was about to unfold. One officer, Major Alexei Smirnov, had been slightly careless during the previous games. A delayed move at chess, a small hesitation at cards, a barely audible sigh at the banquet. Alone with Stalin, the errors compounded. "Comrade Smirnov," Stalin said softly, circling the desk, "you enjoy games, yes? You like strategy?" Smirnov swallowed hard. Yes, Comrade General Secretary." Stalin stopped behind him, leaning close, eyes cold as ice. "And yet, even in games, you make mistakes." He gestured to the chessboard from earlier, the cards, the banquet table, every memory of minor missteps. "Do you understand the cost of mistakes here?" Smirnov nodded quickly, his hands trembling. "Yes, comrade." Stalin leaned back, almost contemplative. "In my Kremlin, loyalty is measured in fear." A long pause, then a single command, low and deliberate. "Guards." The officers in the room stiffened, understanding instantly. Some had anticipated it, others had hoped it would pass. No one spoke. By the time the guards reached Smirnov, Stalin was sipping his tea, calm and unhurried, observing the reactions of the remaining men. Their eyes were wide, faces pale, hearts racing. They had witnessed what happened to a single mistake, and they understood. In Stalin's games, the line between survival and death was invisible, ever shifting, and merciless. He raised his glass quietly, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "Loyalty," he murmured, "is knowing the rules before they are written, and fearing the consequences when they are not." The rest of the officers left in silence. No laughter, no chatter, only the heavy, lingering echo of terror. In Stalin's Kremlin, the games never ended. They merely shifted.